Ladies and gentlemen, in an age of relentless noise, distraction and urgency, the modern mind has become a battlefield. Messages bombard us, opinions clash, and 1,000 small demands pull our thoughts in conflicting directions. The self is not at peace. We suffer not from lack of information, but from the excess of it, unfiltered, unmeasured, and unexamined. What then is the remedy? The answer lies not in withdrawal nor in conquest, but in mediation, the conscious act of placing reason between impulse and response, between event and emotion. The modern mind must not be ruled by every spark of emotion or every flicker of fear. It must learn the discipline of stillness. The world will present turmoil. That is its nature. But the world does not disturb us. Our judgments do. Let us then return to the center, not of the world, but of ourselves. The center where one asks, is this within my control? If it is, we act with clarity. If it is not, we release it without complaint. Between action and acceptance lies our strength. The modern mind, when unmediated, becomes a mirror of chaos. But when governed by calm deliberation, it becomes an agent of order. Not by suppressing feeling, but by training thought. Not by denying the external, but by disciplining the internal. To live wisely is not to chase every pleasure, nor to flee every pain, but to measure what truly matters, and to stand firm in that knowledge. The untrained mind reacts, the mediated mind reflects, and so let us not seek to silence the world, but to tune our mind. Let us not escape responsibility, but choose our responses with care. In every moment ask, what depends on me, what does not, and in the answers find your peace. Mediation of the modern mind is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is how we endure chaos without becoming chaotic. It is how we preserve our humanity in a time that too often forgets it. Thank you. The modern mind finds itself in a peculiar kind of suffering, not born of scarcity, but of abundance. It is not ignorance that overwhelms us, but the deluge of stimuli that constantly demand our attention. Notifications, messages, updates, opinions, all arriving not gradually but all at once, forming an unrelenting cascade of noise. We are surrounded by more information than any generation before us. Yet rarely do we pause to ask whether more is better. The result is a mind stretched thin, pulled in too many directions to focus, respond, or reflect with any clarity. In place of stillness, there is restlessness. In place of contemplation, reaction. The very tools meant to empower thought often scatter it. This condition is not external. It resides within our own responses. The world has always been full of chaos. What has changed is not the world, but our access to it and our willingness to consume it without measure. Every scroll, every headline, every opinion we absorb without reflection becomes another thread added to the tangle of thought that occupies the modern mind. We believe we are informed, but often we are simply distracted. The mind jumps from idea to idea, fear to fear, desire to desire, with no opportunity to settle. The more data we ingest, the less we digest. And what is undigested becomes indigestion, not of the body, but of the mind. The old challenges of survival have been replaced by new ones. Attention, discernment, and discipline. The modern mind is not starving for ideas, but for silence. Not silence as absence, but silence as space. The kind of space in which reason can breathe. Without it, we are flooded with impressions that are never examined. We accept what is loud as what is true, and what is urgent as what is important. But noise is not knowledge, and urgency is not wisdom. The sheer volume of external input has not deepened our understanding, but scattered it into fragments. We carry fragments of thought, fragments of identity, fragments of purpose, none of them fully formed, none of them whole. To suffer from too much is not a noble pain. It is a confusion of priorities. The modern mind, in its overwhelmed state, mistakes motion for progress, sensation for insight, activity for agency. We become passive receivers of experience rather than active shapers of meaning. The machinery of media, technology, and consumption rewards reaction, not reflection. The faster we respond, the more we are rewarded. But in rushing to respond, we skip the most vital step: understanding. A thought unexamined is a thought unowned, and thoughts we do not own us. There is no virtue in knowing everything that happens in the world if one has not yet understood what is happening within. The mind that is always outward cannot turn inward, and the inward journey is the only one that reveals what truly matters. But this journey requires calm, It requires restraint. It requires the will to separate the necessary from the trivial. That will is eroded each time we allow the flood of modern life to dictate our focus. Each unfiltered intake of information chips away at our sovereignty of thought. We no longer think, we are thought for. In this condition, we are not free. We are tethered to devices, to headlines, to comment sections, to the need to be up to date, even if nothing in our character has been updated. The discipline required is not one of retreat from the world, but of standing firm within it without being consumed by it. The problem is not that the world offers too much, but that the modern mind takes in too much without deciding what to let go. It is not the presence of noise that does the damage, but our passivity in the face of it. The mind, if left unchecked, becomes a sponge for confusion, absorbing every opinion until it loses its own shape. It begins to echo what it hears, not consider what it believes. The most dangerous consequence of this is that we come to mistake mental clutter for complexity and forget that truth is often found not in more, but in less. To live with intention in the modern world requires one to understand the immense power of pause. The space between stimulus and response, though often overlooked, is where the entirety of human freedom resides. In this narrow, fleeting gap lies the difference between being ruled by emotion and being guided by reason. Every situation we encounter, every word we hear, every slight or praise we receive triggers within us a movement of thought, a pull toward reaction. Yet the mind that is disciplined does not leap forward. It waits, it examines, it mediates. Reaction is instinctive. It is the immediate firing of sensation to thought, thought to action, without review. But what is instinctive is not always wise. The child reacts, the animal reacts, but the reflective mind intervenes. To mediate is not to suppress emotion, but to place reason between the spark and the flame. It is to acknowledge the feeling, but not be led by it blindly. This is not repression, nor is it passivity. It is mastery. Mastery of the self begins the moment we recognize that not all impulses are commands to be obeyed. The modern condition thrives on immediacy. Everything around us insists that we answer now, decide now, respond now. But wisdom does not rush. It does not bend to the tempo of urgency. It holds steady. It studies what arises within and asks, is this a true reflection of the moment or merely a passing cloud? Emotions are not permanent. They are messengers. Some tell the truth, others deceive. The mediated mind does not silence them, but questions them, observes them, and waits before choosing the appropriate response. In this discipline lies power, the power to break cycles of conflict, the power to speak with clarity rather than heat, the power to walk away from insult, to withhold judgment, to refrain from action when inaction is wiser. Anger, fear, jealousy, these arise uninvited, but they need not be accepted as guests. Between their arrival and our decision is a threshold we often fail to notice. But to see it, to stand within it, is to take responsibility for our own mind. The person who does not practice this mediation is a captive of whatever emotion visits them next. Their peace is fragile, their focus scattered, their choices reactive rather than deliberate. In contrast, the mediated mind does not flinch. It allows emotion to rise, but not to rule. It accepts reality, but does not surrender to it. It sees the insult, but does not absorb it. It hears the praise, but does not become addicted to it. It observes the chaos, but remains undisturbed. Such strength is not loud. It does not advertise itself, but it is unmistakable in its effect. One who pauses before acting appears calm, not because they feel nothing, but because they feel deeply and yet remain unmoved until reason has spoken. This practice does not remove us from life, it deepens our engagement with it. By placing reflection before action, we choose with greater clarity and respond with greater purpose. We become less reactive, more intentional. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice this inner stillness, to stand at the crossroads of impulse and response, and choose the path not driven by instinct but by principle. And through repetition, the mind reshapes itself. What once was automatic becomes considered. What once was impulsive becomes intentional. The habit of mediation strengthens not only thought but character. It transforms the self from a collection of moods and reactions into a source of stability and judgment. The world unfolds according to its nature, not according to our wishes. Events occur, some predictable, some sudden, some pleasant, others painful. Yet it is not these events themselves that disturb us. It is our judgments about them, the interpretations we assign, the narratives we construct, that give rise to our suffering. A word spoken by another is just sound until we decide it is an insult. A delay is merely time passing until we declare it an inconvenience. What disturbs the peace of the mind is rarely the thing itself, but the meaning we impose upon it. Every experience passes first through the filter of perception. This filter is not neutral. It is shaped by memory, by fear, by expectation, by desire. When we mistake our interpretation for truth, we become entangled in emotions that have more to do with our inner state than with external reality. A neutral event becomes a personal offense. A minor obstacle becomes a sign of failure. We react not to what is, but to what we believe it to be. The untrained mind does this automatically. The trained mind pauses and distinguishes the raw fact from the layered judgment. To understand this distinction is to reclaim power. If it is not the world that troubles us but our thinking about the world, then peace is not found in controlling others or changing every circumstance, but in correcting our perspective. There is immense freedom in this realization. We need not wait for life to calm down before we find calm. We need not depend on others behaving well in order to feel well. We need only examine our thoughts with honesty and ask whether they are helping us see clearly or merely reinforcing our agitation. This does not mean we deny pain, nor does it mean we dismiss injustice. It means we learn to see things as they are, without adding unnecessary suffering to what already exists. Pain is part of life, but misery often arises from our refusal to accept pain, our insistence that reality must match our preference. When the rain falls, the unwise mind complains about the weather. The wise mind accepts the rain as part of nature and adjusts accordingly. The fact remains unchanged, but the emotional outcome differs entirely. There is a question we must return to often. What is within my control, and what is not? If something lies outside our control, another's opinion, a sudden change, a past event, then to agonize over it is to waste strength on what cannot be changed. If something lies within our control, our response, our attitude, our effort, then we should focus there, for it is where influence truly resides. Much of our distress stems from this confusion, from attempting to dominate what lies beyond us and neglecting the mastery of our own mind. Judgment is swift. It rushes in before understanding. But if we hold it back, even for a moment, we may uncover the truth beneath the surface. We may find that what seemed like failure was instruction, that what seemed like insult was a reflection of the speaker, not the self, that what seemed like misfortune was merely a change in direction. The mind that delays judgment gains the opportunity to see clearly and respond wisely. To walk this path is to become less dependent on the shifting conditions of the external world. It is to build an inner fortress, not of stubborn denial, but of calm discernment. Each time we challenge a hasty thought, each time we replace assumption with inquiry, we weaken the grip of false judgments and strengthen the clarity of perception. Over time, the mind becomes less perturbed by passing events. It becomes more stable, more rooted in reality as it is, not as it is imagined through the lens of unchecked opinion. The instinct to escape chaos is natural. When confronted with noise, disorder, or confrontation, the impulse is to seek a quieter place, a calmer setting, a different world. Yet the search for peace in the external world is often a losing battle. One cannot silence the winds or still the tide. The noise of the world has always existed, though it now arrives in new forms, through screens, through messages, through the ceaseless urgency of modern life. The challenge, then, is not to eliminate the noise, but to remain undisturbed by it. It is not in retreat from the world that peace is found, but in the cultivation of an inner state that does not depend on circumstances. The calm that endures is not the result of a quiet environment, but of a quiet mind. One can be surrounded by noise and yet remain undisturbed. One can be in the midst of tension and yet carry stillness within. This stillness is not apathy, nor detachment in the cold sense, but rather a kind of anchored clarity. It arises from knowing that true peace is a function of perspective, not environment. The world changes by the hour, by the minute. If one ties their peace to the world's movement, then that peace will be as fickle and fleeting as the circumstances it depends on. To cultivate this stillness, one must turn attention inward, not to escape, but to take responsibility. The outer world will never stop offering reasons to be disturbed. People will disappoint, plans will fail, uncertainty will persist. To demand that life quiet itself for our comfort is to make peace a hostage of chance. But to root peace in the self, to draw calm from disciplined thought and clarity of values, is to possess something that cannot be taken away by noise or change. This kind of peace is quiet strength. It does not advertise itself, but it does not falter. Many seek tranquility by withdrawing from people, from cities, from the demands of their duties, yet they bring their restlessness with them. Because the unrest is not in the environment, it is in the unexamined mind. The habit of reactivity, of allowing every voice, every change, every difficulty to provoke internal chaos, is not cured by distance. It is cured by discipline. The discipline to observe before reacting, the discipline to distinguish what belongs to us from what does not, the discipline to return to the present moment and to act or refrain from acting with intention. Silence of the external world can be pleasant, even necessary at times, but it is not reliable. External peace is temporary. It depends on others, on weather, on fortune. Inner peace, on the other hand, is a practice. It is built slowly through the repetition of wise responses. It is maintained by resisting the pull of external disturbance. Each time the mind chooses to remain still amid noise, it grows stronger. Each time it acts according to reason rather than reflex. It affirms its sovereignty. There is great strength in one who carries stillness into chaos. Such a person becomes a source of order in disorder, a calm presence in moments of anxiety. They are not immune to feeling, nor do they avoid difficulty, but they do not let outer events dictate the condition of their soul. They walk into noise, but they are not noisy. They face challenge, but they are not shaken. This capacity is not given, it is cultivated. It is earned through awareness, through self-examination, through a commitment to principles that remain firm no matter how the winds of circumstance blow. Peace, then, is not a place to find, but a way to be. It is not a refuge from life, but a mode of living. To live wisely is to resist the pull of extremes. The desire for pleasure and the fear of pain are two forces that often shape the lives of those who have not examined their own minds. These impulses seem natural, even justified, but when allowed to govern one's choices, they lead to instability. A person who chases every comfort, who avoids every discomfort, does not live with freedom, but with dependence. Their happiness is conditional, reliant on the presence of ease and the absence of difficulty. Such a life is fragile, for it places its foundations on conditions that are always shifting and rarely in one's control. Pleasure is not an enemy, nor is pain an evil, but both are to be held at a distance and judged with care. The problem arises when pleasure is pursued as the ultimate goal, as if ease and gratification were the marks of a successful life. The danger lies not in the moment of joy, but in the attachment to it, the expectation that life must always feel good. When that expectation is not met, which it inevitably won't be, the mind grows bitter, resentful, confused. It sees normal discomforts as wrongs and every hardship as a personal failure. Pain, likewise, is often misunderstood. It is treated as something to be feared at all costs, a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. But pain is a part of the human experience. It teaches, sharpens, and reveals. It shows where we are weak, where we are too attached, where we are vulnerable to the forces we cannot control. Pain strips away illusion. It demands presence. Avoiding it at all costs means avoiding growth, discipline, and the deep satisfaction that comes from enduring difficulty with purpose. The wise person does not seek pain, but neither do they run from it. They endure what must be endured and remain composed throughout. The balanced life is not one of constant comfort, nor one of deliberate suffering. It is one that seeks alignment with nature and reason. It recognizes that both joy and sorrow pass through us like weather. One does not define us any more than the other. The person who chases after a constant state of pleasure will eventually be ruled by it. They will be enslaved to appetite, to entertainment, to approval. Their peace will be stolen by the slightest discomfort. Conversely, the one who expects pain at every turn becomes cynical, closed off to beauty and connection. Wisdom lies in holding both lightly. A principle-centered life does not measure success by how good something feels, but by how right it is. It asks not a "does this bring me pleasure?" but a "does this align with my values?" The answers are often different. Some of the most important choices we make bring discomfort. Some of the most destructive temptations appear pleasant. The one who lives wisely has learned to say no to pleasure that weakens the soul and yes to difficulty that strengthens it. They do not allow feelings to dictate the direction of their life. They allow principle to lead and let feelings follow. Pleasure is enjoyed but not clung to. Pain is felt but not feared. Each is seen as a visitor, not a master. This mindset brings freedom. It makes one steady in the highs and the lows. It creates a character that is not shaped by external fortune but by internal clarity. It allows for joy without dependence and for suffering without collapse. The wise person remains the same through both, not by hardening their heart, but by training their mind. They learn to see both pleasure and pain as tests, as opportunities to practice moderation, patience, and insight. Mediation is often misunderstood as avoidance, as if to pause in thought or refrain from immediate reaction were acts of weakness or indecision. In truth, the act of mediation, of placing thought between impulse and action, is a mark of mastery. It is a discipline, a conscious refusal to let instinct alone dictate behavior. To mediate is to hold the reins of the mind, to observe without being swept away, to deliberate before deciding. It is a quiet but powerful form of resistance against chaos, both internal and external. In a world that values speed and immediate expression, the ability to delay, to withhold, to remain still is rare. The mediated mind does not lash out in anger nor collapse in fear. It does not leap to judgment nor rush to escape discomfort. Instead, it examines. It questions. It listens first to itself before responding to the world. This is not inaction but the preparation for right action. What seems like delay to the impatient is in fact the process of choosing the most appropriate and purposeful response. The strength of mediation lies in its capacity to reframe. The mind that mediates is not held captive by the first story it tells itself. It does not assume that the first feeling is the final truth. It allows for revision, for correction, for humility. In doing so, it avoids many of the traps that ensnare the reactive mind, resentment, regret, and escalation. Where others may respond in haste and later wish to take back their words or deeds, the mediated mind has already considered the weight of its actions. It moves with intention, not with pressure. This kind of mastery is not cultivated overnight. It requires practice, repetition, and a willingness to step outside the whirlwind of automatic emotion. It is uncomfortable at first to resist the pull of immediate reaction. The mind feels exposed, uncertain, perhaps even weak. But over time, this pause becomes strength. It becomes a space of control, of choice. In that space, one becomes free, not from difficulty, but from compulsion. And in that freedom, dignity is preserved. Decisions made from this space are not the product of mere survival or defensiveness, but of reflection and clarity. Mediation also builds resilience. A mind that has learned to pause under pressure becomes less shaken by the unexpected. It does not crumble under the weight of uncertainty because it has trained itself to sit with ambiguity. It has learned that not all problems demand immediate resolution, that not every provocation requires a response. This kind of patience is not passivity. It is the restraint of one who knows their strength and chooses to direct it rather than disperse it. It is the action of one who has measured the moment and selected the response that reflects their values, not just their mood. To mediate is also to become aware of patterns. It is to recognize the familiar triggers that pull the mind into loops of reaction, to see how old wounds color present moments, how ego seeks to defend itself even when it is not under threat. The mediated mind becomes a mirror, showing us not only what is outside, but what resides within. Each moment of pause is a chance to examine our own assumptions, to dismantle illusions, to become less governed by habit and more guided by reason. Over time, mediation becomes a way of being. It is not a technique to be used only in times of conflict, but a lens through which to engage with the entire world. It transforms conversations, tempers ambition, and deepens presence. It allows joy to be more fully experienced, not chased. It makes pain more bearable, not denied. It shifts the focus from controlling outcomes to mastering responses. And in this shift, the self is no longer tossed about by the noise of the world, but becomes steady, deliberate, and whole. Thus, the practice of mediation becomes not merely a tool, but a transformation. It reshapes the mind, steadies the spirit, and aligns the individual with the rhythm of nature rather than the chaos of impulse. In cultivating the space between reaction and response, we reclaim our freedom. We learn to walk through the world with composure, speak with intention, act with wisdom, and endure with quiet strength. The modern mind, overwhelmed by noise and motion, finds in mediation not escape but return, to clarity, to self, to balance. And in that return we discover the truest form of peace, one that is neither given nor taken, but built within.